Do-do-wah-dee-da, the place where men and women really speak. Do-do-wah, do-do-do-wah. Oh man, what a show. Do-do-wah-dee-da. It's men's radio. Do-do-wah-dee-da. This crazy show is on 3 times a week. Do-do-wah, do-do-do-wah. Now Russ and Phil are there to help with all your cares. We laugh, we cry, we talk like grown-ups do. But if you're sad and low, it won't cost you no dough. And radio, that's the place for you. With Russ, Kane, and Phil Dave.
Welcome to the peak of the week.
Sounds interesting. You've got like a kind of extra butchness to your mic today. Extra butch. Yeah, extra butch. Sen Monroe, straight out of the gap there. And there's Sen Monroe in the colours of Her Majesty the Queen, the sheepskin knows when there's Sen Monroe being pushed hard by Kimmy Lashmar. Kimmy Lashmar now is with 2 furlongs from home. Hello, everyone. With Chrissy Holt coming in from Spain.
All this year I'm off to Spain. Heavy Hispania.
I tell you what's pissing me off, watching you leap around, knowing that I am just sitting here virtually immobile. Thank you. Samara, I hope you're doing great, Russ. I wish I was, my old darling, but the back's holding up. Yeah, well, let's just say I'm still trapped. There we are. Cooler in Spain, 36 degrees. God almighty, 36 degrees.
Well, please, that's cool.
Imagine.
Gracious.
Chrissy Holt has the weirdest lunches in the history of the world. 4 cheese pizza with potatoes and peas. Ow. It actually hurts to laugh. But there we go. Veronica Curran all the way up in Edinburgh. Hello, Veronica. Hope you're well. Now with added butchness. Yes, that's right. Added butchness. And Paul Claridge. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're having a great week. No, I'm not. But it'll get better. It will get better. Fabulous guest coming up. It's something that really, really interests me. And when I saw it, I thought, yeah, I'm going to grab this guy. Because I know a lot of people get really hacked off when their cars get stolen. It's infuriating.
Well, that makes perfect sense.
It does. I mean, you're annoyed. You're annoyed and it's angry and it's totally antisocial and it's a horrible thing to do. So we've got this guy coming on who is an expert in his field. And before we do bar humbug, no, I never want to do Christmas again. It's debilitating. What can I tell you? It's debilitating. And so you're just going to have to plow through it. That's all there is to it. Yeah, still in pain. Well, there we go. Anyway, there we are. That's you've got bigger problems than I have. Mark J.W. Thomas, good afternoon, gents. Looking forward to your show. You must have a very empty life. Very. Sent you friend requests as I didn't hear from you. What's this? Sent you?
Oh, I never look at friend requests. I have to go through them. I think there are a few.
I don't look. I'll be honest with you. I never bother.
Myself, who in their right mind would want to be friends with me anyway? So I don't really sort of think to look at it.
Do you know why I don't look? Do you know why I don't look, Phil? I've got nearly 1,000 friends. Nearly 1,000. I don't know who these people are. I don't mean you, Mark. There's 1,000 people, and I'm not going to plow through 1,000 people. I really do have other things to do. Let's dash across back to Spain. Morning, gents. Wasn't the cricket? I've no idea. I never watched sport. I never watched sport. I've no idea.
I didn't watch it, but I had heard that there was some sort of record-breaking score going on from the cricket yesterday. So
you'll have to help us out.
But I haven't got a clue what it means. I think I heard the number 300 something or other. I don't know what that means. I heard something about 300 runs. And then I thought maybe that's a lot of burritos. I'm not sure. But I don't know. I'm not entirely sure sort of what that means. But
anyway. This is good from Richard Todd. He says, good afternoon, lovely gents. I thought I'd put on Love Island on early.
Hashtag wretch. Anyway.
Right. So Michael, fill us in on the cricket because I don't know what the hell was it. Was it Don Bradman? Was Don Bradman playing? Colin Cowdrey, Ted Dexter, Freddie Truman? I have no idea. Now, if you're wondering what this is, I'm going to share. Never watched Love Island. Is this what it's like? Yes, you've got no Love Island. You've got to get all your clothes off and you've got to shag everything that moves.
Yeah, I don't
Basically, that's Love Island.
tell the difference. If you were to watch an episode of Love Island now, which of course is one of ITV2's sadly most successful programs, you would then be able to look at this on Men's Radio with Russ and I, and you'd say to yourself, hang on, wasn't I just watching ITV2? That is how similar this is. The level of intellect, the physiques that Russ and I are putting underneath these garments of ours.
The six-pack.
Honestly,
it's extraordinary. Later on in the show, vacuous, moronic girls will be coming on with faces that are so Botox they can't move. And we'll be discussing breast implants, a great thing to have when you're about 21. So that's basically it. All right, here we go. Michael Verley, back to the cricket. Record run chase.
Nope, no idea.
I don't know what that means.
Say so.
Phil and I have no idea. I genuinely don't know what that means. Record run chase.
Actually saying it's quite lucky that I am not that I work for one radio station and not my sister station or the sister station, which of course focuses quite heavily on sport. Sen, I have to tell you that I don't have to tell you. I'm going to tell you anyway that you may be quite pleasantly surprised to learn that I was actually on the sister station with
God Almighty, was there a Tiddlywinks championship
on a more regular basis than I had been on the other one until recently? So there we go. But anyway, let's
now, if you're wondering what the hell this is,
we weren't, but keep going.
Well, that's the end of that conversation. I would rather pour Tabasco. Shut your face. I'd rather pour Tabasco sauce in my eyes than watch that crap. Lisa, I am so with you.
I don't think I put Tabasco sauce on. I would happily sleep through, but I don't think I put Tabasco sauce on my eyes, if I'm honest with you.
I love that phrase. Do they pop in planes? What the the breast implants? I wouldn't know. I have no idea. Chrissy Holt says,
I suppose that's one. It's a new meaning to the term. To actually, never mind. But anyway, can I just point out? Ask you, sort of, in all seriousness, okay, you appear to be drinking something that looks almost quite healthy. Why would you be doing that?
Because I tell you what I've done, just to kickstart stuff, because I can't move at the moment. So I've paid for this.
Oh.
I'm not advertising them because they're not sponsoring it or anything. I just paid for it, and it turned up the next day. So I'm trying to cut down, and if I can just, only because it helps my back if I'm a little bit lighter, and also because I can't exercise at the moment. I have physical training, a personal trainer twice a week, and of course I've had to cancel all of that because I can't do any weights at the moment. It's very frustrating. I don't like it. There we go. So that's why I'm doing it, and we shall see if it works or not. I never know if these things are a load of old rubbish or they actually work. But if I stop drinking and try these shakes, which are meal replacements, which have all the nutrients and proteins and all the stuff that you need, we shall see what happens.
Don't you miss food, though?
Oh, hugely. I hate it. Hate it.
Oh, my goodness me.
Of course I hate it. Of course I hate it. I love, when you're sitting and you guys know that about Ebony, my mini schnauzer, my sidekick, and of course I can't take her out for walks and everything. So she's having a wonderful, wonderful time with her playmate, who's a little cockapoo. They absolutely adore each other, and the cockapoo's 4 now, and Ebony, who's 12. Suddenly becomes young again. It's wonderful. She becomes young again, and she's running around. So she has a whale of a time. I miss her crazy. Yeah, people who've got dogs, you will understand this. She's only a little dog, right? And her not being here, the whole atmosphere of my home utterly changes. So weird. And I keep thinking I'm hearing her. I think I'm hearing her, going onto the couch or back to her bar. Of course, she's not here. Hasn't been for a few days.
On the rare occasion Monty and Carlo stop being antisocial and they actually go out or they're taken out somewhere, the house seems so weird without them. But I can't put my finger on why it is.
It does feel the atmosphere just completely, utterly changes. It's a weird. Right, back to Michael Verby. Michael, are you ever coming back to Leeds? Have you decided to stay with your sister Stacey in Spain? It's gone now. England chased down 322 to beat Pakistan.
Great.
That sounds good. Sam Munro's going off on one about breast trunk. He's just very excited. He can use the word breast. Bless you. Now, there's something serious. I know we're expecting our guest soon, but it's something I really want to talk about. And we're going to come back to it after our guest because it's a long subject. Some of you are in the industry, like Sen. Some of you are not in the industry.
Like me.
All right. Here's the skinny on this. All right. There's a comedian. I'm not going to say who it is because I don't want to perpetrate this. But there is a comedian I've been following all during lockdown that I thought was terribly, terribly funny. And he portrayed a load of different characters on video. So he'd be Prince Harry, he'd be some yobbo, he'd be Keir Starmer, he'd be all sorts of totally different people. And it's a kind of commentary on the news and current events. All right, you with me so far? And it cheered me up we're kind of still in lockdown a bit, you know what I'm saying? But it cheered me up during the worst of it. So I even donated a small amount. I'm not patting myself on the back as if I could at the moment, but I'm not patting myself on the back. Just a small little thank you to say thank you so much to this guy for cheering me up on it. So I did a very small donation token on his Patreon page. That's how much I thought he was good. We have the Euro World Cup final, and we mess up the penalties. We don't get the penalties, so we lose. Now, Phil and I, okay, it's the end of the game, and we get on with our lives. There's nothing we're going to do about it. Other people have gone crazy. Now, yeah, Monica, I'm coming on to that. Yeah, so he was active. I always tweeted with him. We'd always have an exchange. I'd always quote little lines from his videos, etc. And I'd never met this fellow, never spoken to this fellow, but it was all, in the public arena. For some reason, only known to this guy, he put tweets up that didn't lead up to a gag. There was no preamble. I know Sen will understand. If you're going to do a gag, you do a setup, you do the punchline, that sort of thing. It just looked like random kind of, and they've been taken as heavily racist tweets. Within 1 hour, this guy's career was completely destroyed. 1, no more Twitter, gone. 2, instantly dumped by his agents. Very big comedy agency. Dumped and removed from the website. 3, he had a huge tour coming up. Now, if you're in the entertainment industry or any industry, you will know how difficult it is to keep your career going, especially during the pandemic. Every single venue cancelled him. Gone. His career in under an hour is completely destroyed. Now, do I think it was a smart thing that he posted? No. Stupid thing to do. That's not my point. My point is this. Should comedy have boundaries? Should it have boundaries? That's my point. Would I have posted what he, not in a million years, because it's a nightmare out there, as Phil and I know. You're walking through a minefield. To do that seemed insane. But should comedy be censored? Should we send somebody to career gulag in Siberia because of one thing? Should we do that? I'm not talking about I'm offended, because I'm with John Cleese and I'm with Ricky Gervais. I don't care if someone's offended. Get over it. We're all over 21. If you're offended by comedy, watch something else. I get that. easy to be afraid. You know, standing in a bus queue and somebody starts berating you. I understand that. But if it's a comedy routine, it's a comedy routine. But we've got to the stage. Gerald's a mate of mine, by the way, Michael. Gerald Ratner's a pal of mine. We've got to the stage where if the masses don't like what you're saying, you will be cancelled. I don't agree with cancel culture. I'm very torn with this, and I really like everybody's input. I'd just love to know where you stand. I'm totally torn, and I'm going to start with Phil, Dave.
Well, I tell you what we're going to actually start with is we're going to start with our guest, and we'll come back to
yes,
later,
good idea.
Very patiently waiting in the digital green room, looking as if to say, hang on a second, this is not what I signed up to. So fear not, Dom Littlewood, we're coming to you now because, of course, we're going to talk about the subject now. It's completely different.
Yeah, it is.
Cars, okay? And in particular, well, keeping our cars safe. Now, this might sound really silly to say this in this day and age because you'd be thinking that cars have got such brilliant technology in them to immobilize them now that what could possibly be from years gone by where one used to have a window smashed and the car was hot-wired and off you go and you never see it again. Well, fancy this. Imagine if you are Mamma Mia actor Dominic Cooper, who has had his car stolen a mere, unbelievable, 5 times in 12 months. Well, consumer champion Dominic Littlewood joins us now to discuss this particular subject. Dom, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time out to speak to Russ and I. And this seems quite extraordinary. I'm guessing, though, that with someone like Dominic Cooper, that's bad luck, to say the least.
Bad luck and location, Phil. It's a combination of both. I mean,
it's a bit hard to hear you, Dominic. A bit hard to hear you.
What can I?
That's better. Now we're talking.
That'll do the trick.
Move closer. Yeah,
that's it.
It's a bit of hard luck and location, Phil. Dominic Cooper lives in Greenwich in London, and in the top 20 hotspots all around the country, the top 11 are all London-based. I mean, it might not be a surprise to some people, but so it's a location. I don't know what car he had, but whatever model it was, for a thief to steal it 5 times in 12 months, it's obviously very desirable. And he's not taking enough precautions. So he could probably improve his chances of it not being stolen again just by taking a few simple measures.
Well, I mean, Cooper, I mean, I don't think for a second, though, that in this day and age, I know we obviously do have to, but really shouldn't have to worry about that kind of nonsense in that sort of, because that's just ridiculous, though. To be targeted that number of times, you would like to think, I think you'd be forgiven for thinking that after maybe twice, the police would start to take it a little more seriously. And
they couldn't care less. No, Phil, the police couldn't give a monkeys. They're too busy on diversity courses. They're not going to chase down your car. Here's the thing.
So you're quite right with that. Actually, the police are so understaffed now, and it's very hard.
They couldn't give us. They couldn't give us stuff. You're wasting your time. So here's the thing. A few questions, because this is an area I'm being a petrol head myself. I would say now, in the world that we live, I used to have really lovely cars. I'd never go back to that. Never. I wouldn't want the strain. I wouldn't want the aggravation, and I wouldn't want the nerves of thinking something's going to happen. So I've got a lovely little tiny car for running around the city. Suits me down to the ground. And that's, my days of doing those lovely cars finished. I'm not going to go back to it because I couldn't take the aggravation.
Russ, what car have you got out of interest?
Oh, I'm not going to say live on there. I can tell you another time. Why?
When you say that, in the top 10, that the Ford Fiesta, Focus, and the Vauxhall Corsa are the top 3 that are stolen.
Dear God, why? Jesus.
I know. It makes me wonder. In the same top 10, you've also got an Audi A3 and Range Rover Evoques in the top 10. So It's not just the small ones. But there's various different reasons cars are stolen. But it normally boils down to 2. One is because the car is going to be taken away, it's going to be stripped down, the parts will be sold. So it's very hard to trace those parts. And collectively, those parts will be worth more than the car itself. So that's what happens a lot of the time.
Why? Oh, gosh. Now, Dom, hang on. Can't let you rush past that. Why is that?
Well, because there's if you went to buy, for example, let's say a Range Rover rear light cluster, because you accidentally dropped something and it broke. So cluster. That
Okay.
will cost you £700, Russ.
How much?
About £700.
Jeez.
Just
What
for
the heck? What a con. What an
Right.
absolute con.
if you imagine a car being stripped down for parts, you've
Yeah.
got 2 wheel light clusters there, plus your headlights, your seats, your interior trims, your brains, your computers, the wiring harnesses. There's a fortune can be earned. And once it's broken down, if there's no trace of chassis numbers, once that's gone, registration.
Once the VIN plate's gone or whatever.
The VIN plates, once those items have gone, no one could tell you whether that tail light you've got is a stolen item or not. So that's what's
Where do
happening.
they go on?
Wow.
Do we know? Is it they go to sort of say independent garages and sell them to them, or do they try and sell them direct to the consumer?
Good point.
How do they shift them? I don't know if you know this. I'm sorry, I'm not suggesting you would know, but just out of interest, if you do.
Okay. With some of the more expensive cars, what will happen is that the thieves will take them away and they'll try and make sure they haven't got trackers on them, which is one of the biggest hurdles they have to deal with. That's a device that signals, GPS signals, so people can track the vehicle if it's been activated and it's stolen. So once they've made sure it hasn't got a tracker or that's been immobilised, the more expensive cars might be then containered and shipped abroad, Middle East and far afield, where you're never going to see them again. With the smaller cars, particularly with the things like the Fiestas, the Focus and the Corsas in the top 3, you imagine the demand for cheap second-hand parts on those cars. Everything in them has a value, from the petrol or diesel in the tank right round to the bare metal, which once they finish stripping everything down can be sold. It's for people who are doing this sort of, they can earn a lot of money.
There's a big deal. By the way, people are loving you. And what does it say? Paul Claridge says, "Hi, Dom. I love the series Dom Diggs, especially the episode where you worked as a bin man." That's what Paul's saying.
Yeah, Dom digs in.
Paul,
I
Paul
got my
is saying
hand
that.
in you, Russ, so I got stuck in.
Good for you. Good for you. Stephen Marsh, will you stop? I bought some German cake. Unfortunately, it was stolen. Right. Now, catalyst. Yeah, I know, Stephen. You wouldn't think he's a top accountant, would you? He is as well. Now, Dom, catalytic converters.
Yeah.
They are being nicked left, right, and centre. What the hell's going on there?
Not wrong, Russ. The crime catalytic converters went up 6-fold last year. Now, I know a little bit about cars. I'm not an expert, but I did, when I was 16, I did do an apprenticeship at Sitting Guilds with cars. A catalytic converter is a box which it fits into your exhaust system.
Yeah.
It's held in place by 2 U-bolts, one at the entrance, one at the exit. And they're just bolts shaped like a U with normally 13mm nuts on it, 4 of them in total. Anybody with no mechanical experience could get underneath a car with a spanner or a ratchet and they could whip that box off within a minute. Yeah. Now, what's happening is, in a catalytic converter, there's precious metals. And these thieves are collecting these boxes up. They're taking them to some dubious scrap metal merchant who's then paying them for the valuable metals.
Yeah.
And it's something which is incredibly hard for the consumer to stop. But in my opinion, I think we could almost eliminate this crime overnight. The garages who supply the car could offer it as an option, or the manufacturers. Instead of putting these U-bolts on and leaving them like that, just put a spot weld on each nut. Then anybody who gets underneath with a ratchet or a spanner, they're not going to be able to.
They can't do it. They can't
the
do
bolts
it.
are cheap. They're not any value. When you need to eventually change your exhaust, they can be angle grinded off. So that means if a thief's out there and he wants to steal your car, he's going to have to carry around an angle grinder with him, which is, you're equipped for a crime. Then, that would almost.
And also, you're going to hear it. You're going to hear the damn thing.
You're also making sparks underneath a petrol tank, so you're not exactly the brightest spark in the box, are you? Tool in the box.
To be fair, you soon will be if you use an angle grinder underneath a petrol tank. Might I suggest it's all well and good that sort of in terms of sort of spot welding these as far as manufacturers are concerned, but is there anything that you could suggest that maybe we as the car users, the consumers, could do to help ourselves?
Yeah, well, the reason I'm here is because I'm on behalf of Co-op. They've conducted a survey over 4 years of car crime hotspots around the country. Now, they've got a link you can go to. The easiest way is just to go to Google and write in Co-op Park Smart. Is it Park Smart? No, Park Smart Tool. Type that into Google and you can enter your postcode. You can do it right now where you live, work, or where you park, and it will show you how many crimes have been committed there in the last 6 months. Now, my house is in Lambeth.
Wow.
Worst place in the country, Lambeth. It's top of the list for a hotspot for crime. But I had a look at it and I realised that one of the areas where it's particularly bad is right next to a very big supermarket car park. And I put two and two together and realised that's why people are parking their cars up, going and spending an hour shopping, coming back, and the car's gone or it's been broken into. So it's worth having a look and just checking your area out. There's other things we can do. I mean, I say to people, try and think like a thief would think. Think if I wanted to steal a car or just break in, what would I be looking for? Well, ideally, you don't want a car that's underneath a street lamp or a CCTV camera. You want one that's in the back of a car park or in a dark alleyway. So park your car somewhere where there's pedestrians, there's other people who observe it, looking at it underneath a street lamp or cameras around. There's one here which a lot of people don't think about. But there's opportunist thieves who quite often target forecourts at petrol stations. You fill your car up. If there's no one in the car, you go in to pay for your petrol.
Yeah.
And while you're obstructing buying your lottery ticket and getting your card out to pay for your petrol, the thief's only got to open the door. Your phone, your wallet, your coat, your glasses, sunglasses, laptop, whatever, gone like milk on a Weetabix. So even though you're only away from the car for a few minutes and a few feet away, lock the car if no one else is in it.
Always.
Do
you know what, Dom? I'll tell you something. When I'm filling up the car,
I don't understand that. How could anyone in their right mind just walk away from a vehicle and just say, "Oh, I don't need to lock it"? Really?
Because you're only 10 feet away in the garage paying for your petrol.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Do you know how I am like so paranoid about it, Dom? When I'm actually putting the petrol nozzle in, my car's locked because someone could jump in and I've always got the keys in my pocket. I never leave the keys in the car ever. Not
Russ,
for a second.
You're very, very savvy because you changed your car and your attitude and everything else. But do you ever, when you leave your car at night time, Russ, do you ever put the wheels on full lock so the steering lock's engaged?
My steering lock's always engaged. I always make sure that it's engaged when I get out the car. I won't leave it on full lock, and I'll tell you why. Because I read many years ago you're really meant to have them parallel, not at an angle, because it increases wear. No,
that's it. There's wear being caused as stress on the tyre. But with modern day tyres, you're never going to suffer from problems with that, Russ. That's highly unlikely. But thieves who will steal a car, particularly at night time, will try and break in and then push it to a quiet spot down the road. Now, wheels locked towards a curb. Two things. One, it means they've then got to negotiate to get the steering wheel lock off, which will obviously put a lot of people off. But secondly, if you were on an incline and your handbrake wasn't on fully, it's also not going to go tumbling down the road, crashing into someone's garden wall. So that's quite a nice little tip, that. And it is worth leaving them on a full lock. You won't put enough stress on your tyres, Russ, that they're going to need changing the next day. You can get away with that without a doubt on modern day.
That is very clever. I've not thought of that. Is really smart. I like that a lot.
Well, shall we end on a strong note, actually, because I'm afraid I've just seen we've already gone way over time that you're actually supposed to be with us, and we're very grateful to you. But where do people get more information?
It's been my pleasure. I'll just say to people, download the car park tool, check on your area, just think like a thief and try and make sure that it's due diligence. Just be sensible. Even small change in the centre console, thieves are breaking in for now. So leave anything on display. And one last thing, really quickly, guys, when you lock your car with your car key and it's got a button on it, there's jammers out there now which are stopping the cars from locking. So once you lock it, just double check the door handles, make sure it is actually locked.
Definitely. Dom Littlewood, thank you very much.
I loved that. That was great.
It's been great talking to you both.
For info, people
thank you so much.
As well on Twitter at Dom Littlewood. They can find you there. Brilliant. Dom, thank you so much.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Russ.
Farewell.
Thanks, fella. Bye-bye.
Okay. Oh, look at that.
Lovely guy. A lovely chap.
Excellent. Right. Now, okay, so back to your question that we had before Dom joined us, is that you were saying about, well, what do we make of this notion of whether or not comedy should be censored?
Yeah.
Well,
that's it. So let's have what you were going to say about it. By the way, I just want to read this out just before. It says, Sen Monroe says, when I used to be a copper, Christ, God almighty, before acting and writing, I worked in the unit responsible for theft off high-value vehicles. It was a huge business. I bet it was.
I'm really torn on this notion, about whether or not comedy should be censored or not, because
it's a very, very difficult issue, which is why I wanted to bring it up, because it's all to do with mental health and how we look at life, how we entertain. Go on.
Here's the thing. I find it absolutely abhorrent when someone as an individual is the target or the subject of a joke. They are the punchline. Okay. So in other words, if someone is laughing at another individual for whatever reason, I don't like that. I don't think it's clever. I actually think it's tantamount to bullying with spectacles on, you know, is that with this sort of with showbiz lights around it. That's what it boils down to. If you are using someone else as the brunt of a joke, I don't like that at all.
So give me an example. Don't say a person, but what are you thinking of?
Okay,
Somebody
so
does a
it's
like
quite
a what?
commonly known as what's it? This style of comedy, is it known as banter or something like that? Sort of when you're in an audience, heckling almost, as it were.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
an individual. Well, no, heckling is something different, obviously, because heckling is actually when the member of the audience is yelling out at the person on stage. But you know what I mean? If you've got someone who's just in the audience who's been picked on by said comedian just for a laugh, I don't personally care very much for that, because I actually think it's quite cheap. You know, it's pretty nasty.
So when Edna Everage used to, you knew if you sat in the first 2 rows of an Edna Everage show, you were going to have all sorts of nonsense on, or a Michael Barrymore show. You know that. Did you find that unpleasant? I mean, I will never sit in the front, because I'm in real life very quiet and quite reserved. But if I'm not performing, I don't want to be part of the show.
Yeah. Look, okay.
So do you object to that?
I don't find it very comfortable to listen to, I think is the best way of putting it. Now, it may be that if the person on the receiving end of that is genuinely finding it hilarious themselves and is in very good spirits about it and agrees, then fine, no problem. Yeah. But when someone starts going bright red because they are hideously embarrassed at the person who is on stage picking part at them, I don't really care very much for that. But what I do find...
So let me ask you this then. Let me just extend that out slightly, and then I want to get back to the main core, the central plank of this. If you take somebody like a Nina Conti, who's a genius ventriloquist, Tom Conti's daughter, I'm a huge fan, and she takes you from the audience, and then she puts the mask on, and she does, you know, that you're talking. Do you find that funny, or do you? Because the person's enjoying it, the audience is loving it, the husband or wife is killing themselves laughing, watching their other half being made a twerp of. Do you think that's horrible, or do you think it's a comedy?
I think with something like that, that's a little bit different to actually poking fun at somebody, because what you're doing with that
is you're directly poking fun at them. You're making a person look and say ridiculous things. It's very funny. I'm not being prude about it.
Not them saying it, and it's very different to actually sort of put words in someone's mouth with a ventriloquist mask on that moves. I know exactly sort of the format that you're talking about. I've seen you do what she does, and she's very clever. But when you sort of watch the way that they obviously put the ventriloquist mask on, you know full well it's not the person saying it. And you also know full well that it's Nina Conti actually just sort of saying it to get a laugh because it's funny, not because she's actually ripping in.
She's getting a laugh at the expense of the punter. The joke is you've got some big butch bloke and he's coming out with some silly voice and saying silly things. So the joke, the lines themselves aren't funny. The premise is funny. The setup is funny. And then watching some big bloke, you know, have some silly little squeaky voice and say very peculiar things. But you think that's okay?
I think that's very different. I think it's very, very different to someone being picked on. So when you actually have someone being picked on, you know what I'm talking about. That's a very different situation. I don't personally like that very much. But I would say as far as comedy is concerned, this is actually the point I was trying to make, is that if someone's in on it and it's an individual, I find that a bit unpleasant to watch. If you're talking about taking a group of individuals, a group of people, and you are basing humor on stereotypes. First and foremost, stereotypes come from somewhere. You might not like it, but stereotypes do come from somewhere. It's normally because it's true, whether you like it or not. Okay?
Oh, Christ, really? I wouldn't say that.
I would.
I wouldn't say that at all. You've opened a can of worms there, fella.
Come on, then. Where does it come from? Where on earth do stereotypes come from if it's not based on
misinformation and ignorance? Mostly.
Yeah, highly.
Mostly
No. Come on. We know we're grown up. We know full well what we're talking about.
We are grown up here. So even now, I'm finding myself choosing my words very carefully, because if you take every country has their own version of the Irish gag, and the Irish people must be sick to bloody death of it. So if you go to, Polish, Americans have Polish gags, which is their equivalent. Canadians have Canuck gags. That's their. Every country has their own has their. Who the hell's this? You have no idea. They can go away. It'll have to ring. Sorry, I can't switch it off.
The point is that I'd say that whether we like it or not, stereotypes do come from somewhere. Where I think that there is a major problem, and actually Michael Verby has just tapped into this, he's beaten me to it, is when people take offense at those stereotypes who are not necessarily the individuals involved in the first place. So in other words, if you are sort of getting offended by stereotypes, but you are not from that background, this is where I find it a major nuisance and where absolutely should not be censored. I'm sorry, but if you're not actually sort of saying, as an individual who comes from that background, and a collective as well, you know, most communities do actually have vocal pieces, as it were, in the sense that they have representatives from those particular communities to actually sort of highlight the misgivings of life and anything that they find a problem for their community. But the bottom line is that when you realize that humor is actually meant to be just that, humor, I think that when we now sort of live in a world where, frankly, the only thing that really gets a laugh is when a comedian thinks it's hilarious to insert a swear word unnecessarily right in the middle of a sentence. And it's normally the nerves of hearing that swearing that's where the laughter is coming from. I've mentioned him many times before, and I mention again, if you look at someone like the late, great Bob Monkhouse, without a shadow of a doubt, I know you think the same way as well, comedy genius.
Yeah, no, comedy god, the best, the greatest.
No way to describe.
The greatest.
Absolutely phenomenal, because it was clever, witty, and actually sort of was based on sort of an interpretation of truth behind it. And if you had to try and censor Bob Monkhouse for any particular reason in this day and age, which I'm fairly sure there would be one or two things now that he would be censored for, I think that would be criminal. It'd be ridiculous, because people...
But if he did any wife jokes... See, you're getting to the stage... I wore this deliberately. I mean, Tommy Cooper, I adore. Morecambe and Wise, I adore, and there's a lot of modern comics that I love as well. Now, the thing is, what can you joke about? What can you joke about? And my point is, if somebody makes one slip, do they deserve to be completely destroyed? Their career is done. This guy's career will not come back. It'll be impossible. Impossible. You say, oh, this is interesting. Paul Andrews. You see, the great thing about comedy, I always say this and I believe it. If you find it funny, it's funny. As comedians say, well, no, hang on. Comedians say funny is funny. If you find it funny, it's funny. If I don't find it funny, to me, it's not funny. So it's a completely personal taste.
Exactly.
Comedy is a totally personal taste. How many times have you sat in a room, people are laughing, you think, what the hell, this is just rubbish. And other times you'll be cracked up and people think, well, I don't get it. Now, Paul Andrews is saying, sorry, you're confusing issues now. Oh, Chrissy, Bernard Manning was disgusting, was he? Was he really? When he was doing his stuff, it was a different world. Was he disgusting? Did we all suffer as a result of that? We didn't. And you didn't have to go and see Bernard Manning. See, it's the thing, like, he's disgusting. You can't, there's so many confusing things here. Number one, I'm going to come on to Paul's point in a minute. You can't keep looking back with the vision and the sensibilities of 2021 from comics from the 70s and 80s. You can't do that. It's impossible. It's impossible.
But people will try, sadly.
Yeah, they want to redo everything. It's cancel culture. It's cancel culture. They want to redo everything. You know, when we saw, let's take a silly example, John Inman, who I worked with twice in Panto, charming man. You know, when he played Mr. Humphreys in Are You Being Served? Are You Being Served? Family comedy. And he was outrageously camp. And people didn't go on about it because he was just an amusing character. Could you do it now? Of course not. No, you can't do it now. Could you do it then? Yeah. Jim Davidson doing his Chalky White character, which he defends to this day. Jim Davison's a much more interesting person than people give him credit for. I mean, you know, the naysayers just think he's some Neanderthal dragging his knuckles. He's very far from that. Very far from that. You couldn't do that act now. But he had a mate called Chalky White. Did his mate object? No, his mate thought it was hilarious because that was Jim's mate. Did it help things? I don't know. I'm not clever enough to answer that. So let's go back to well, I just want to get it up, to Paul Andrews. Peter Kay, right, swears, yeah, uses stereotypes, but isn't considered a modern day comic. He's seen as crossover old school. Yes, he is. He is seen as an old styled comedian. I don't think he's very well at the moment, to be honest with you. Here's the thing. This is from Ramsey. I was writing late last night and watched a lot of the name of the comedian whose career has just been absolutely destroyed. From his early stuff, yes, I watched him live at the Apollo from 12 years ago or something like that. From his early stuff to the videos he was doing more recently, yeah. And I still can't work out why he pressed the self-destruct button on Sunday night. I loved his early stuff, worth checking out. Now, yeah, his style changed. So he was a much more general comedian, and then he went much more radical because his early stand-up was indistinguishable from most people, not unfunny, and then he became much more radical. I'm more interested, from a mental health viewpoint, is this. Why would somebody, when things are going well, when you've got a tour lined up, you've got a big following on social media, and you suddenly see a self-destruct button the size of a dustbin lid, and you think, I think I'll press that. Why? That's what fascinates me.
Yeah, but hang on a second.
Why would somebody do that?
Well, I do know people who have done that, who actually sort of have that kind of characteristic where they will press the quote self-destruct button. But I wonder whether or not they actually realize it's self-destruct at the time, whether or not they're sort of so lost in their world and their style, or whether or not they actually realize that what they're doing is professional.
Here's the thing, Phil. I've got to choose my words very, very carefully. All right. We push the boundaries on this show. And although we're not censored, I work on the basis that if we libeled somebody or slandered somebody, there would be repercussions. Absolutely. And we try to be yeah, we push it, and maybe the language is a bit fruity sometimes, but that's the whole point. And the audience, everybody watching and listening, that's what they want. That's what they're expecting. And they're all over 21, and they're not sitting there clutching their pearls going, oh, my goodness me. Because you know what you're going to get. It's adult conversation about adult issues centering around mental health and well-being. So to answer your point about was he aware, if you and I, God forbid, 1,000,000 times, suddenly did a racist rant, everyone would be going, what the bloody hell are they doing? Well, let's take you out the equation because that's not fair. I'm putting pressure on you. If I did it, everyone would go, what the hell's he doing? You know, it was just out of character. It was just out of character. Now, it's so complicated. It's such a complicated thing because then people steam in that we're a race. Alison Hammond, talking about stretching a small talent a long way. Alison Hammond has said Britain is systematically racist. I think her words are endemically racist or is institutionally racist. She quoted yesterday.
Well,
A, I don't think it's true, and B, it's so unhelpful.
I find it absolutely ridiculous that anyone would say that. First and foremost, I want to know what proof anyone who says that this country is systemically racist has got. That's the first thing I'd say, because systemically would suggest that it is every single person who is born into this country is brought up to believe racist views. Okay, that's systemic. Okay, I do not believe that for a second. And secondly, I would like to know why on earth, if someone genuinely believes that this country is racist, and I mean genuinely believes it, not saying it because I'm not saying this is what Alison Hammond's doing, but I'm saying that anyone who would just jump on the bandwagon and say, oh yeah, England's terribly racist, why would you live here? Why in their right
Oh,
mind?
well, that's the great argument. Yeah,
No,
but you can't say that because
why
Phil,
anyone right mind?
Phil, that goes straight back to, oh, Phil Dave says if you don't like it here, go back to where you came from.
No,
That's
it
how
doesn't.
that's how the media twist it. You know that. You're in
No.
the same game as I am.
I come from England, but I tell you for nothing, if I thought for a second that my life was under some sort of threat for being of Jewish background, I would not stick in this country. Okay, why would you want to live in a country that's racist?
Well, you wouldn't. But there you go.
It's just ridiculous.
But if you're born and bred in Streatham, you're not going to suddenly want to think, oh, no, if I pop to Africa, I'll pop to India. You have
I agree.
You've got no relationship with that country whatsoever.
Maybe, but why would you want to live in one that's racist?
Well, you wouldn't. Well, you may not have the choice. You may not have the choice of where you live.
Everyone has
every now and then I keep thinking about emigrating. I do, because of the weather. I just like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? I want to do all of this, but I can do that from anywhere in the world. I don't need to be in London to do it. It's so difficult. Here we go. Ramsey says, I recognise he appeared under stress in the last couple of years as he railed against wokeism. Well, we rail against wokeism. I can't bear it. Can't help feeling he wasn't his normal self. I think I was discussing this online overnight with somebody very well known. I'm not going to name. Very well known with a huge following. And I think that's the truth. I think the fellow had a mental aberration. And that has caused all of this. But was it right to call it out? Other people are saying, Paul Andrews is saying that this chap didn't read the room. He put out a tweet. This is exactly what I said, Paul. There was no context to it. If you wrap something up in a context, it kind of would make sense, or you could judge it. But to just go with no basis at all, and then he doubled down twice. There's a rule in radio. If you make a terrible mistake, don't try and recover from it. You won't. You'll dig yourself a bigger and bigger hole. Move on. I mean, apologize if you've done something stupid, but otherwise go on. Don't apologize. 90% of the people won't have spotted it.
Yeah, but you got to be. I think actually that it's deeper than that, RK, because actually you say that even if someone assumed he was a comedian or what, but think about someone like Alistair Stewart, okay? And I can name, because it's exactly what happened to him. It was very public when this happened. Mm-hmm. He was dismissed from ITN off the back of quoting Shakespeare that was taken out of context. And what the hell? This is the problem, is that people are taking things out of context. It's nothing to do with the individual half the time. It's just completely and utterly misinterpreted, misunderstood, and it can cost people their livelihoods, and it's disgusting. We should not live in that world.
What we live in now, you see, I just want to come back to Paul Andrews' point. I don't think, says Paul Andrews, that this incident is part of the boundaries for comedy argument. It kind of is, and it isn't. What he did wasn't comedy. It was a random tweet that went horribly wrong, and then he doubled down on it again with another follow-up tweet, and as if that wasn't bad, he did a third tweet. He should have just bloody left it. But anyway, clearly he didn't, and that's what. And Michael Verby says, I don't think the chap pushed the button deliberately. He just seriously misread the room. But this is a smart guy. He knows how to read the room. But we are really, all those black and white monster films where the villagers all get their pitchforks and they get the burning, torches. Let's go to the castle and burn it down. And they all go out in a mob and they go and burn Dracula's castle down, or wherever the baddie baron is. This is what we're living in now. We're permanently in this poxy village with everybody ready with their pitchforks in one hand, the burning torches in the other, and they don't know who to pick on next. That's my view. And once you start to censor everything, well, who is the moral arbiter of this? See, this is such a huge issue. Who's the moral arbiter? Do I think that what he wrote was funny? No. Do I think it was correct? No. Do I think it was helpful to any sort of argument? Not at all. Not at all. Would I have done it? Not in a million bloody years. Not in a million years. wouldn't have occurred to me to write it. But if you start, who is the moral arbiter of what is permitted and what's not permitted? Who is that person? Who voted for them?
Aha. And therein lies the very problem.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's exactly the issue, is that just because one idiot finds it offensive, someone else might find it funny. And that is totally and utterly up to them. And I have to say, having been, so technically speaking, both of us come from a background that has been the brunt of jokes in the past, that I don't know whether or not I do find sort of anti-Semitic jokes that amusing, but that's me. For some reason, there may be some people out there who do find them amusing. I can't say I understand why they do, but they do.
If you go and see back in the day, this is another thing, and I am going to say it because it's on my mind. If you go and see somebody like back in the day, Jackie Mason, the great Joan Rivers, all of those people, Jackie Mason in his heyday, not now, etc., those jokes were hysterically funny, because they were coming from their point of knowledge and you could accept it coming from them. If I go and see Roy Chubby Brown, which I would rather do my tax return, it's not my cup of tea. He's hugely popular. It's not my cup of tea, all right? So that's unfair to say. It's not for me. But he's hugely popular. He's had a career lasting 40 years plus. If you go and see Roy Chubby Brown and he starts doing anti-Semitic gags and the audience is screaming with laughter, I loathe that. I loathe it, but then I don't like his humour. But he would argue, and he's right, he picks on absolutely everybody. Nobody is safe. He's not picking on one group. He's picking on every group. And if you go to a Roy Chubby Brown, the difference is if you go to a Roy Chubby Brown show, you know exactly what you're going to get. So if you're offended, you're the only person to blame because you know what it's going to get. You know, that's like going and I don't know, ordering egg on toast and then complaining that it tastes of egg on toast. Well, it's egg on toast. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, look, it's the same kind of way. There's one particular comedian out there who I actually have no problem mentioning either because it's technically true, is a chap called Trevor Noah, who's a South African.
Oh, no, I used to love him and now I can't bear him. I used to absolutely love him.
He's so flipping ignorant when it comes to Middle Eastern Eastern politics. It's unreal.
Yes,
but unfortunately, he's using his platform to spread rubbish. That's the problem. Now, I'm not bringing...
He used to be a mainstream, I've got to say with you, Phil, Trevor Noah, I've followed his career for years, and he used to be mainstream and was very funny. When he was doing stuff about himself, growing up, his experiences, they were hilarious. And now he's some political ranter. And I really want to put my fist through the television screen. I can't watch it. Watch it.
But this is the point, is it, unfortunately, sort of when you start sort of going down a very particular dark path, then there is, I suppose, a group of individuals who get offended by it. And that's kind of the point we're making with the the comedian we're talking about now, who we won't mention. But if there is a group of people who are genuinely offended by what they come up with, then maybe they do deserve to lose their position. Now, it just so happens that Trevor Noah is incredibly lucky. For some reason, he gets away spouting this nonsense day after day or whenever the heck he's around.
Well, do you want to look at, you see, and if you say, oh, why? You're walking straight into a minefield. You're going to last 2 paces in. Now, Monica,
a valid point where he says, so would you leave it on social media companies to censor stuff? No one understands their terms of use or community standards. We need a fresh look at all of this. Now, Ramsey, but I actually think that's a very different point, if you don't mind me saying. I completely agree that something does need to change on social media. And I certainly wouldn't leave it to social media companies to censor themselves, because we've seen what a superb job they've done of that already. But my point is that when you look at something like a social media company, the reason why I think they do need to be tackled in terms of trying to censor the content that's on there is because that half of the stuff that is so offensive is not meant in humor. It's not humorous at all. It's misinformation, that's dangerous misinformation that ultimately leads to death and conflict. And that's why I have a major
that's an entirely different thing. Right, let's just deal with some of this. I miss Dave Allen, says Monica. Yeah. Monica makes a good point, because this one's, I don't like anti-Semitic jokes. A lot of my Christian friends were offended at Jerry Springer mocking Jesus. Jerry Springer didn't mock Jerry. That was no. I think you're slightly confused, if I may say. That was a thing called, Jerry Springer the Opera. Is that what you're referring? That wasn't written by Jerry Springer. That just had his name. It was written by different people.
But make no mistake, though, that it's totally understandable that if it was targeting a particular group, in this instance Christianity, and there were Christians who were offended by it, well then absolutely that's their right to be offended. But what I would say, though, yes, there you go, Monica's just put the opera.
Yeah,
but
it was Jerry Springer, the opera, not written by Jerry Springer at all.
Yeah, in exactly the same way, though, that I would stress that anyone who is offended by any type of humor, you have the option not to watch it. And that's the big difference. So even though I wouldn't necessarily condone half of the nonsense that's out there, I mean, I think we've lost the definition of comedy. I really do. I mean, half the stuff that's out there now that comes under the category of comedy, in my humblest of opinions, is just not funny. And that's not because I'm being subjective. It's just because it boils down to, unfortunately, a load of hyped up, overpaid lunatics who really just appear to say whatever the hell they feel and put a couple of swear words in for good measure. It doesn't make sense. It absolutely doesn't make sense to me and to most people I know who actually have a decent sense of humor. But that's a one side.
When you talk to what would they call it? New comedy. What do they call it? When the young ones came out and Ben Elton and all that gang.
Oh yeah, I know what you mean.
I forgot what they've called it.
I can't remember what the expression is, but I know what you mean.
So there was a huge and fascinatingly, you look at French and Saunders now. And Saunders.
Was it called something like New Age comedy or something like that?
So what the hell was it called? Alternative comedy. It's called alternative comedy. And you know, I saw Dawn and French's first stand-up act, probably the first stand-up they ever did in London. They were terrible, and I got annoyed because they did a joke about cancer, and I was furious. And I haven't even lost my wife at that point. It was so long ago. I hadn't even met her. And I hated that joke. And it's funny enough, when I see Dawn, I mean, they won't even remember having done it, right? It was so long ago in the 80s. And they're national icons, national treasures, you see, and quite rightly so. I mean, Dawn French is fantastic. Fantastic. I don't remember taking offense at jokes. I just switch off. One thing's for sure, and I'm going to be very contentious here. If the people missing the penalties had been Jewish, unlikely because they'd have to be sportsmen. Boom. If they'd been Jewish, do you think there'd have been this outcry?
I want you cancelled.
Well, there you go. I can make the joke. You can make the joke. Because it is what it is. But had they been Jewish and missed the penalties, do you think the whole world would have said, "Oh my goodness, this is terrible, this is abuse"? I don't think that they're given a monkeys.
No, I don't think so.
They wouldn't have given us stuff. There wouldn't be any.
They would have
had. They wouldn't. They couldn't give a.
Yeah. But to me, it's irrelevant. Honestly, I don't care sort of who they are, what their background was. If people are going to be racially abused because they've missed penalties, then frankly, I think you're an idiot. You know, that's the bottom line. I don't mean you, Russ. I mean that's the individual.
Who? Do you mean the person berating them for missing the penalties?
Yes.
And the irony is, had they got the penalties in,
they would have been heroes.
They would have been the most marvelous people in the history of the universe. They would have been gods. You know, this is what's so pathetic. It's ultimately it's. You know, I can't get excited about it. It's a game of football. I watched it. We lost. I moved on. I just think for mental health, this is all about mental health. What is happening to these people that they feel so? But the other thing is, how much abuse? I don't know, because I won't look at it. I will not look at it. It's like swimming through a sewer. Was it millions of tweets? Was it tens of thousands? Was it thousands? Or was it hundreds? Now,
well, whatever.
Let me be clear. I'm speaking on behalf of men's radio and women's radio. I'm speaking on behalf of Phil for once. Even one is too many. Let me be very clear.
Totally.
Even one is too many. But if everybody is clutching their pearls and getting absolutely hysterical, if it was a small number, that's a different matter.
Can we just point out?
As I said, even one is far too many.
We'll end on a positive note because there is breaking news that's come out of this show. It's not out of this show. It's out during this show. Is that people found guilty of racist abuse of footballers online. Okay, this is until now wasn't online, but online will now be banned from matches. The Prime Minister has said. So there you go. So there is something positive, and it goes.
And Sen brought us that about 20 minutes ago. Well done for everybody. Quite right. you know, but knee-jerk reaction.
Thank you for your comments. We'll see you on Friday.
See you Friday.
Bye.
Bye-bye.